the US President on his two-day visit. Here's our Home Affairs correspondent, Catherine Carpenter.
With President Trump's arrival in the capital and demonstrations already underway, the Met's expecting a busy few days. Retired Superintendent Bernie Gravitt has 31 years' experience policing visits like this. He says by avoiding central London, the President has created extra challenges.
You've got the events in London which will need considerable resources, but at the same time the Metropolitan Police are likely to be asked to provide to Thames Valley for the sites there, Blenheim Palace, Windsor Castle. We've got other events, Notting Hill Carnival, we've got terrorism to face, and we've got day-to-day business. You know, knife crimes on a surge. Who's going to be policing that while we're policing the Trump visit?
So the pressure's on?
Oh, definitely.
Today, the Met Commissioner said her force would keep the President safe and facilitate protests. Command centres in Lambeth will coordinate operations, while every day 265 officers from outer boroughs are being redeployed as needed.
The rest of London will be policed correctly. Let's not kid ourselves. It may take a little bit longer to get to certain calls, but we will still respond to everything as you would expect of us. That's what we do. It's just the impact for my colleagues is the aftermath, you know, the burnout of what they're dealing with. When you've got someone like President Trump coming to England, it's a moving feast. We don't know what on earth is happening until he arrives near enough, because he can do what he wants.
The Met won't confirm the cost of all this, but we do know when the Chinese president came on a controversial state visit 3 years ago, over 3,000 officers were involved, the bill for policing running to over £1 million. Of course, the visit will be costing the US president too. His entourage sounds like something out of Top Trumps. His plane, Air Force One, includes a presidential suite, a medical suite and a mobile command centre. His car, known as the Beast, costs £1.5 million and can be turned into a sealed panic room containing oxygen tanks and bottles of the president's blood type. Then there's the helicopters, Marine One, fitted with anti-missile defences. The president's bringing 1,000 staff too, including a White House doctor and military aides who carry what's known as the nuclear football and a book of prepared war plans. The president won't have to do battle in the capital thanks to his schedule, and where there are demonstrations against and in support of his visit, the Met Commissioner says her officers are ready. Catherine Carpenter, BBC London News.
Well, our political correspondent Carl Mercer is in Regent's Park, where President Trump is due to arrive, and the protesters are there too, Carl.
Yeah, and in fact the volume level's just gone up a notch or two, because if you look over to the trees behind me, that is where President Trump is at the moment, in the American ambassador's residence, and the fence there is as close as the protesters can get. There's a couple of hundred here, and the noise level's just gone up a notch because the two helicopters that have been carrying the president around have just landed. They're expected to take him to Blenheim Palace in the next moments, where he'll go for dinner before coming back here, and the protesters are saying they're going to stay here and make this sort of noise all night to make them know that they think he's not welcome here. And it's not just the protesters, maybe 200 or 300 here tonight. But take a look round here. This is the sort of level of interest that the President's visit has garnered here in London. There are press crews from all over the world, American crews, European crews, and of course, people like us from London. So as I said, this protest going on today, small at the moment, but the ones tomorrow are expected to be much bigger. Something like 50,000 people expected to march through London tomorrow in two separate marches. And there's a message from the Mayor tonight, because he's also worried about a far-right march on Saturday, which police say could be spiky in their words. And the message from the Mayor to all the protesters, he says, my message to those coming to the protests in London is that they must be peaceful and good-spirited. To those intent on causing trouble or breaking the law, he says simply, you are not welcome. So the Mayor's saying, yes, come and protest, make plenty of noise, but do it peacefully over the next 3 days.
OK, Carl, with the latest there from Regent's Park, many thanks. And on that note, actually, just to say, if you want more information on any of the road closures and how they might affect you, BBC Radio London will have up-to-date information throughout the day. Plenty more ahead tonight, though, including parting ways. Could Antonio Conte's time with Chelsea be over after just 2 years? The club refused to comment. More now on the government's latest Brexit plans and strong reaction from the city. There are warnings from London's financial sector tonight that they'll do economic damage. Some fear coming out of EU existing arrangements will lose its business. Let's get more from our political editor, Tim Donovan. Tim.
Yeah, Riz, there's been clarity for businesses about what will happen in the trade in goods in future. A common rule book is being talked about, more or less staying with the present EU arrangements, at least to begin with. But very different when it comes to services, and the financial sector is worried. Here in the city, a sector which, as you know, generates £70 billion a year. They had wanted what's called mutual recognition. In effect, we'll recognise your rules and regulations in the EU. If you recognise ours, we'll more or less rub along as we've been doing now in terms of financial services. Now, in this white paper, this government policy document, it is clear that there will be more hurdles and more barriers for companies doing business in Europe in future. Yes, with that will come not having to abide by EU regulations, setting our own. But the City Corporation don't like it.
London is the leading global financial centre. It serves markets across the world as well as in the EU. It employs 1.1 million people directly in the financial services. What this paper is suggesting is a change in the level of access to markets, which may mean a reduction in business and therefore a reduction in jobs.
But won't it also mean that you won't have to abide by EU rules? That's something you would welcome, wouldn't it? Because it gives you access to more trade globally in such a global business.
Well, we need to look carefully at what's proposed and understand how it's going to be carried forward. But the critical point is that this is a crucial sector for our economy, both the financial services and the professional business services which support it. We need to ensure that whatever deal is finally done enables those really important markets to carry on working.
But Riz, what about the future of London's workforce? That other big question, from the coffee shop to the trading floor. Yes, freedom of movement is going, but the city says it's been quite encouraged that there are signs in this paper that there's recognition of the importance of EU workers. Now there are suggestions that there'll be no need for visas, certainly in the short term or temporarily isn't of course defined. Business certainly would like the whole question of migration and immigration and the restrictions to be sorted out as soon as possible, and you can see a political row coming to the fore if there are going to be unequal arrangements and Commonwealth countries don't get the same favourable treatment.
OK, Tim, yes, much reaction to those detailed Brexit plans. Thank you. That's Tim Donovan, our political editor. 2 teenagers were arrested today in connection with an attack on a former British ambassador to the US, Sir Chris Mayer. His wife said the 74-year-old is in hospital with severe injuries. The incident took place at Victoria Underground Station yesterday afternoon. The 15 and 16-year-old have been released under investigation. A Grenfell survivor was told by an operator she couldn't advise her what to do when she rang 999 reporting smoke on the 22nd floor. A transcript of the call made by Naomi Lee, who lived on the second highest floor of the tower, was today shown to the public inquiry into the blaze in 2017. A row has broken out over the way a university is trying to enforce immigration controls. University College London had asked staff to carry out checks on the status of international students. Staff, as well as students, said it was draconian and discriminatory. Chris Rogers can tell us more.
Students say the row with UCL management began back in May, when their lecturers were told to monitor international students' attendance through spot checks, including checking the IDs of a sample of students. Well, separately, this email warned staff that their departmental budgets would be fined £20,000 for failing to report immigration breaches. A Students' Union survey found that 83% of 400 international students felt that these immigration measures were discriminatory.
I think it's very telling that the university feels the need to basically threaten staff with fines in order to carry out these policies. They're basically making staff act like border guards. Now, we understand that the university is required by the Home Office to monitor the engagement of international students with their studies while they're here, but there are ways of doing it that don't require students essentially to be treated and feel like cash cows, where they pay extortionate fees before they get here, and then when they arrive on campus, every day they're treated with suspicion.
Well, there's a campaign group called Unis Resist Border Controls, and they claim that the measures create an atmosphere of fear for foreign students.
It causes mental health issues for both students and non-EEA academic staff. You have to understand they're under enormous levels of stress being in this country. And again, the hostile environment policy doesn't just affect them inside the classroom, it affects them when accessing the NHS, it affects them when accessing all types of services.
Well, in a statement, UCL argues that we are required by UK visas and immigration to have engagement monitoring systems and processes which facilitate attendance at timetabled teaching events to be evidenced and non-attendance to be followed up and acted on in a timely manner. It adds that the email about the fines for lecturers was sent in error, and a retraction and an apology for the policy was sent to staff on Wednesday. And as for the immigration spot checks, they were withdrawn in June.
Chris Rogers there. Now I think the faces say it all. It's been an emotional 24 hours as the capital reflects on what might have been after being knocked out of the World Cup. While crowds watched on big screens and in pubs across London, it was also a very busy night for the emergency services on call and those involved in the clean-up operation. Gareth Ferbey reports.
This was near London Bridge, the pub so full hundreds watched through windows. For those inside a Covent Garden pub, a shock when the TVs briefly disconnected. After the first goal, joy. And on Borough High Street, police called.